Every 6 hours, police kill someone. Over 1,000 dead this year. Hospitals kill 200,000 through preventable errors. 800,000 Americans have no home tonight, the worst it's ever been. The richest nation on earth buries its own people. These are facts, and the silence is deafening. Hit like. Subscribe to Decoded X. Turn on notifications. What you're about to see will change everything. Comment below. Share this, they don't want you to see it. Welcome to Decoded X. Behind the prosperity propaganda, beneath the freedom fantasy, there's the real America. One where fresh data reveals systemic failures accelerating, not improving. Where bodies pile higher every year. Where darkness deepens while everyone looks away. This documentary exposes 10 verified realities defining America right now. No politics, no spin, just facts. Just truth hiding in databases nobody reads. Let's decode the darkness. Number 10. The police state arithmetic. 2025 became one of the deadliest years for police killings in American history. By October, over 1,015 people were shot and killed by law enforcement. That's one person every 6.5 hours. Not slowing down, accelerating. California led with 122 killings. Florida followed with 95. Texas recorded 90. This isn't isolated to one region anymore, it's everywhere. Black Americans remain disproportionately targeted, accounting for an estimated 20% of all police shootings despite comprising just 12% of the population. The data keeps getting worse. Police killed over 1,000 people in 2024 too, marking consecutive years of escalating violence. Most victims were unarmed. Most posed no immediate threat. Body cameras captured everything. Prosecutors charged almost no one. New Mexico still holds the highest per capita killing rate. But suburban and rural America now bleeds just as much as cities. This isn't big city crime anymore. This is systemic nationwide violence by those sworn to protect. The badge became a license to kill. Federal oversight remains non-existent. Police departments investigate themselves. Qualified immunity shields officers from consequences. And every year the body count climbs higher. Black males comprise 6% of the population, but 25% of those killed by law enforcement. The arithmetic is undeniable. Number 9. Caged nation. America imprisons nearly 2 million humans right now. The 5th highest incarceration rate on earth at 541 per 100,000 people. Only El Salvador, Cuba, Rwanda, and Turkmenistan lock up more citizens per capita. Here's the nightmare. After declining for a decade, prison populations are surging again. The total incarcerated population grew 2% in recent years, roughly 2 million people locked in cages by 2025. Texas alone added thousands to their prison rolls. Florida, Georgia, Ohio, North Carolina, all expanding their cages while crime hits 50-year lows. The system devours children too. America remains the only nation sentencing kids to die in prison. All 50 states prosecute children as adults. Childhood becomes a life sentence weaponized by prosecutors chasing convictions and political careers. Mass incarceration costs taxpayers billions. State prisons spend up to $69,000 per inmate yearly. Private prison corporations profit while families shatter. Despite crime hitting 50-year lows, 40 states expanded their prison populations. 28 states still enforce brutal three-strikes laws from the 1990s, mandatory life sentences for repeat offenders. Meanwhile, 1 in 4 prisoners is now over 50 years old. America's prisons are becoming geriatric warehouses, with projections showing 1/3 of inmates will be elderly by 2030. In number 8, hospital horror stories. Your hospital might kill you, not your disease. Preventable medical mistakes happening every single day. Between 200,000 and 250,000 Americans die annually from medical errors. That makes healthcare mistakes the 3rd leading cause of death in America, trailing only heart disease and cancer. Think about that horrifying reality. Doctors, nurses, and hospitals kill more Americans than car crashes, guns, and drug overdoses combined. Wrong medications administered, surgical instruments left inside bodies, infections from contaminated equipment, diagnostic errors sending patients down fatal pathways. Communication breakdowns between shifts costing lives. Maryland hospitals saw medical mistakes resulting in deaths increasing for the fourth consecutive year through 2025. The trend is accelerating, not improving. Pennsylvania hospitals filed over 315,000 safety reports in a single year. These aren't minor errors. These are catastrophic failures killing hundreds of thousands. The economic cost, between $37 and $50 billion yearly. But money doesn't resurrect the dead. Most errors go unreported, buried in paperwork, hidden behind legal protections and hospital PR departments. Medication errors alone kill an estimated 44,000 to 98,000 Americans annually. Hospitals and long-term care facilities see medication error rates between 8 and 25%. 1 in every 854 hospital deaths stems from medication mistakes. You trust the system to heal you. Instead, it might execute you, and nobody's being held accountable. Number 7, Streets of Desperation. 771,480 Americans experienced homelessness in 2024. The highest count since federal tracking began in 2007. An 18% spike in just 1 year. By late 2025, that number will continue climbing. 750,000 people have nowhere to sleep tonight in the wealthiest nation in human history. They huddle in tents under overpasses. They shiver in cars. They collapse in doorways. Children represent 150,000 of that number, up 33% from the previous year. California houses 30% of America's homeless population alone. But this crisis exploded nationwide. Texas, Florida, Ohio. Homelessness surged everywhere. Housing costs skyrocketed. Wages stagnated. The safety net disintegrated completely. Over 1 million public school students lack stable housing. They arrive at class hungry, traumatized, displaced. We've normalized child homelessness in America. Black Americans comprise 14% of the population, but 32% of the homeless. Native Hawaiians face homelessness at 12 times the national rate. Life expectancy for homeless Americans, 50 years old. The average American lives to 77. That's a 27-year gap, a death sentence for being poor. Meanwhile, luxury apartments sit empty. Investment firms hoard properties. The Supreme Court criminalized sleeping outside when shelters overflow. America let its people rot on sidewalks while billionaires buy third vacation homes. Number 6. Child labor's dark return. Child labor violations increased 88% between 2019 and 2023. By 2025, the nightmare accelerated. American children, some as young as 12, work overnight shifts, operate dangerous machinery, suffer workplace injuries at rates not seen in a century. The Department of Labor concluded 736 child labor cases in fiscal year 2024 involving 4,030 children. They fined employers over $15 million in civil penalties, an 89% increase from the previous year. Over 1,000 child labor investigations remained open entering 2025. Corporations exploit labor shortages by hiring minors. Meatpacking plants at midnight, construction sites, industrial bakeries, teenagers lose fingers in factory accidents, children burn themselves by frying fast food after midnight, migrant kids work 100-hour weeks paying off smuggling debts. Instead of strengthening protections, lawmakers are weakening them. 28 states introduced bills rolling back child labor laws. 12 states enacted them. Iowa now allows 14-year-olds in meatpacking plants. Indiana lets 16-year-olds work adult hours without parental consent. Florida proposed eliminating all hour limits for 14-year-olds, including overnight shifts. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 was supposed to end child exploitation. Nearly a century of progress is unraveling. The National Consumers League finds itself fighting the same battle their founders fought 125 years ago. America's economy rebuilds on the backs of children who should be in school. This is just the surface. Halfway through. If you're still watching, you're built differently. Subscribe now. This channel survives on viewers like you spreading uncomfortable truths. Number 5. The inequality machine. The top 10% of Americans capture nearly half of all income. The bottom 50%, just 13%. Welcome to the most unequal wealthy democracy on earth. After pandemic relief expired, poverty exploded. The supplemental poverty measure jumped from 7.8% in 2021 to 12.4% in 2022. Millions of Americans plunged back into destitution when expanded child tax credits ended. By 2025, the gap widened further. The Gini index measuring income inequality increased over 3% since 2021. Wealth inequality is even more grotesque. The poorest 50% of Americans own just 1.5% of private wealth. Billionaires accumulated trillions during the pandemic while food banks ran dry. These aren't abstract statistics. This is a mother choosing between rent and medicine. A father working 3 jobs still sleeping in his car. Families declaring medical bankruptcy over insulin costs. 14 states created their own child tax credits trying to fill federal voids. But patchwork state solutions can't fix systemic federal failure. Meanwhile, corporations post record profits. CEO pay packages balloon into hundreds of millions. Stock markets hit all-time highs. But the American worker? Drowning in debt, chained to jobs paying poverty wages, one medical emergency from homelessness. The American dream became American oligarchy. Number 4. Democracy under siege. For the first time in American history, a former president faced criminal charges for attempting to overturn an election. That unprecedented moment revealed how fragile democratic institutions have become entering 2025. Election administrators face escalating threats. Since 2020, the Justice Department has investigated 14 cases of threats against election workers. Death threats, harassment, organized campaigns of terror designed to corrupt democracy itself. Misinformation floods social media unchecked. After Elon Musk acquired X, the platform gutted 80% of its trust and safety engineering team. Content moderation collapsed. Extremism flourished. Only 3% of accounts produce toxic content, but they generate 33% of all posts. 23% of Americans now cite government corruption as a top concern, up from 14% the previous year. Trust in institutions evaporated. Polarization intensified. The center cannot hold. Voting rights face systematic erosion. Gerrymandering reaches absurd extremes. Voter ID laws disproportionately disenfranchise minorities. Poll closures make voting inaccessible in poor neighborhoods. And new legislation in multiple states makes voting harder, not easier. Democracy requires trust. It demands participation. It needs citizens believing the system works. But when institutions betray that trust, when corruption becomes normalized, when violence becomes political strategy, democracy dies with collective exhaustion, and Americans are exhausted. Number 3. Environmental injustice. The United States remains the world's largest oil and gas producer, historically the biggest contributor to the climate crisis. But who suffers most from environmental devastation? Not the corporations profiting, not the politicians enabling them. Cancer Alley, an 85-mile stretch in Louisiana between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, contains over 200 petrochemical plants. Predominantly black communities breathe toxic air daily. Cancer rates soar. Children develop respiratory diseases before age 10. Life expectancy plummets. PFAS chemicals, forever chemicals, contaminate drinking water nationwide. These substances never break down. They accumulate in blood, organs, tissue, linked to cancer, liver damage, birth defects. The EPA set restrictions in 2024, but enforcement remains pathetically weak through 2025. 30 state attorneys general filed lawsuits against PFAS manufacturers. But corporations fight back with armies of lawyers funded by billions. Poor communities can't afford prolonged legal battles. They just keep drinking poisoned water. Climate disasters intensify annually. Wildfires consume entire towns. Hurricanes devastate coastal cities, floods destroy homes. Insurance companies abandon disaster-prone states, leaving families financially ruined with nowhere to turn. Communities of color and low-income neighborhoods sit closest to refineries, waste dumps, industrial zones. Environmental racism isn't conspiracy theory. It's documented policy stretching back a century. Redlining didn't just segregate housing. It condemned generations to toxic environments. They breathe poison while billionaires build climate bunkers. Number 2, the immigration nightmare. Immigration detention increased 21% from 2022 to 2024. Nearly 40,000 people are held in cages on any given day entering 2025. Many are detained in local jails, private prisons, dedicated facilities miles from legal representation. The administration promised to end private immigration detention. Instead, 90% of detainees remain locked in for-profit facilities. Children separated from families. Asylum seekers fleeing violence imprisoned for seeking safety. CBP-1, the phone app required for asylum appointments, fails to recognize darker skin tones. Technical racism coded into border policy. Asylum seekers wait months in Mexico, exposed to systematic cartel targeting, extortion, kidnapping, sexual assault. Texas installed razor wire and circular sawbuoys in the Rio Grande. Human beings sliced apart attempting to reach American soil. Pregnant women, children, elderly refugees, all treated as invaders rather than humans seeking refuge. The Supreme Court ruled cities can criminalize homelessness even when no shelter exists. This logic extends to immigration. Criminalize survival, then punish the survivors. Mixed-status families face impossible choices. Risk deportation, seeking medical care, or suffer untreated injuries. Immigration agents now operate in schools, churches, hospitals, spaces previously considered sanctuary. Immigration raids fuel climates of fear, enabling workplace exploitation. Reporting abuse becomes risky, frightening, impossible, especially for children. Cruelty became policy. Compassion became crime. Number 1, the mental health collapse. Police responded to over 1,000 mental health crisis calls that ended in death by 2024. Into 2025, the numbers continue climbing. People experiencing psychiatric emergencies gunned down by officers lacking proper training, resources, or patience. America's mental health infrastructure crumbled decades ago. Psychiatric hospitals closed en masse starting in the 1960s. Promised community treatment centers never materialized. The prison system became America's largest mental health provider. Jails and prisons now warehouse the mentally ill. Suicide rates climb steadily. Drug overdose deaths accelerated during the pandemic, driven by fentanyl flooding American streets. Addiction treatment remains inaccessible or unaffordable for millions through 2025. Children face unprecedented mental health crises. Teen depression and anxiety rates doubled. School shootings traumatize entire generations. But mental health services? Underfunded, understaffed, unavailable. Waitlists stretch months long. Veterans experience PTSD, depression, substance abuse at staggering rates. They return from war zones finding inadequate care. Months-long wait times, bureaucratic nightmares. 22 veterans die by suicide daily. The stigma persists. Americans suffering mentally are told to work harder, think positively, pull themselves together. But you can't bootstrap severe depression. You can't get away from schizophrenia. Mental illness became a death sentence. We criminalize symptoms. We abandon suffering. We watch them die on streets in cells by their own hands. And we call this civilization. If you made it this far, you're part of the resistance against comfortable ignorance. Subscribe to Dark Decoded X. This channel exists because of viewers willing to confront these realities. These aren't isolated incidents, they're systemic failures woven into America's fabric. This fresh data doesn't lie, the bodies don't lie. Next video, we're exposing the corporations profiting from every tragedy you just witnessed. You're not ready for that one. Nobody is.